The city always woke before the sun, and so did he. His taxi was his world, a small yellow box moving through the veins of the streets. From morning until late at night, he carried strangers, listening to fragments of their lives. Most days, the conversations blurred into background noise, like the hum of traffic that never ceased. Yet in the quiet pauses, when the lights turned red and the rush was forced to wait, he reached for something different. A book rested always by his side, its pages worn, its spine bent from constant use. While others scrolled on their phones or tapped impatiently at the steering wheel, he opened his book. Just a line, maybe two, before the light would turn again. Some might think it too little, too interrupted to matter. But to him, each red light was a door, a chance to step away from the weight of repetition and into a world where thoughts stretched wider than the streets he drove every day. He was a man of quiet hunger, though no one could see it. To his passengers, he was simply another driver, someone they would likely forget the moment they stepped out of his car. But within, he carried questions that had no space in his daily life. Who was he beyond this taxi? Was there more to living than earning fares and counting bills at night? He found no answers in the faces that rushed past him, but in the words, waiting patiently on those pages, he found a strange companionship. Sometimes the books were about distant places, mountains he would never climb, oceans he would never cross. Other times, they were about lives broken and healed, stories of resilience that mirrored the quiet ache he carried himself. Each red light gave him just enough time to take in a seed of thought, and though small, those seeds began to grow. He did not read to escape, but to remember that he was more than just hands on a steering wheel. On certain days, when the city's noise pressed too heavily, he would think of giving it all up. But then he remembered a line he once read, about how even the smallest candle can push away darkness. That single line, found in the stillness of a red light, stayed with him longer than many conversations ever had. He had no illusions of greatness. He did not believe his reading would change the world. Yet, deep inside, he hoped it would change him, one pause at a time. Word of his habit traveled quietly among passengers. Some smiled with curiosity, while others frowned, suspicious of a driver who dared to read when he should be watching the road. A few even complained, thinking it unsafe or simply odd. He heard whispers, felt the glances in the rearview mirror, the half-muttered jokes about a taxi driver pretending to be a scholar. Yet he kept reading. The truth was, their judgment stung more than he ever admitted. He wondered if they were right. What did it matter if he consumed all these words? He was still a man driving in circles, ferrying people from one corner of the city to another. There were days when doubt clung to him like a shadow, and he questioned if the books were a comfort or a waste of borrowed time. But then, in the stillness of his thoughts, he remembered how it felt each time he opened a book. It was like drinking water after hours in the sun, simple, necessary, and quietly life-giving. The lights that forced others into impatience had become gifts to him, a reminder that life always offered pauses, even in the busiest hours. Once, a young man climbed into his cab late at night. The passenger noticed a book lying beside the gear shift and asked what he was reading. When he answered, the boy laughed and said he didn't have the patience for books. Instead, he scrolled through his phone, glowing screen reflecting in his restless eyes. The driver said nothing, but inside he felt the ache of a generation that had forgotten how to sit with silence. He knew people measured success differently. Some chased wealth, others recognition. For him, meaning was measured in sentences that lingered, thoughts that stayed with him longer than the fare he collected. Still, the judgment weighed on him. At times, he lowered the book quickly, hiding it before passengers could see. But the habit always returned, because something inside him longed for more than coins dropped into his hand. His reflection grew heavier. Was it wrong to want something beyond his station in life, to be a driver and yet reach for wisdom? He often asked himself this when the night dragged long. And yet, each time he read a line that pierced his heart, he knew he could not let it go. Perhaps it was not about being seen, not about proving worth to those who mocked him. Perhaps it was about holding on to something that made him feel alive, even if only in fragments stolen between red lights. One rainy evening, a passenger entered his taxi with hurried steps, dripping umbrella in hand. The traffic was thick, the streets shining with reflections of blurred lights. As the car crawled forward, they stopped often at red signals. Each time, the driver quietly opened his book, eyes scanning the lines with calm focus. The passenger finally asked, almost teasing, "Why do you always read at red lights?" The driver hesitated. He could have laughed it off, brushed the question aside, but instead, he answered with the truth. He said that life, for him, was full of motion, endless roads, faces that came and went. Yet in those small pauses, when the world stopped for a moment, he found space to breathe. He explained that books gave him something the streets could not, a reminder that every soul carried depth, that wisdom was hidden in words, and that even a man behind the wheel could keep growing. The passenger grew quiet. The teasing smile faded, replaced by a thoughtful silence. When they reached their destination, they paid and left without another word. The driver thought little of it. To him, it was just another night, another stranger who had glimpsed his habit and walked away. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, the same passenger returned, stepping into his taxi again. But this time, their hands carried a book. With a soft laugh, they confessed that after their last ride, they felt strangely unsettled. They had not read a book in years. Yet watching him, someone with so little time and so little luxury, still choosing to read at red lights, stirred something inside them. They began to read again, and it felt like waking up a part of themselves they had forgotten. The driver listened, a warmth rising quietly in his chest. He said little, only nodded with a small smile. Inside, though, he felt a shift. For so long, he believed his reading was invisible, a secret habit that belonged only to him. Yet here was proof that even the smallest actions could ripple outward, touching someone else's life without intention. That night, as he drove home, the city lights felt softer. The rain had stopped, but the streets still shimmered with the afterglow of water. He realized then that meaning was not always loud or grand. Sometimes, it lived in the smallest gestures, in the quiet choices we make when no one is watching. He turned another page at a red light, no longer just for himself, but knowing that even unnoticed lives carry lessons waiting to be seen. Life often asks us to wait, and in those moments, we decide whether to waste the pause or let it shape us. The taxi driver's story reminds us that growth doesn't always require time set aside, wealth, or recognition. Sometimes, it begins in the smallest windows, like a red light on a rainy street. His quiet act of choosing wisdom over idleness proves that even ordinary lives can hold extraordinary meaning. If this story touched you, take a moment to reflect, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe for more inspiring tales.